All right, welcome back to another new episode of the Blakey Locks Show. I'm your host, Blakey Locks, and I'm joined by two very special guests. It is Jesse and Nick from my fellow Gotham Sports co-workers, I guess, even though we don't really work there. But I don't know what else you're supposed to call it. But guys, thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, we were supposed to have a bigger group. We had a couple guys bail on us at the last minute, but it would have been pretty hectic with five guys anyways, trying for everybody to get a take in. So Nick is here repping the Shield with the Rob Lowe hat. It took half an hour for a convicted cheater to get hired as an NFL head coach for him to decide he had to come in and protect the Shield. I have my Aaron Rodgers jersey on, somebody who's never done anything against the NFL to bring any negative light to the league or anything like that. So I'm sure Jesse agrees with me. So here we are. We're ready to talk about a guy who is not playing in the conference championship game. He did not play in the second quarter of week one, in fact, if we want to bring up his resume from this year. We are talking about four teams that are not surprising that any of them are here, even the Lions, honestly, just based on the low quality of teams in the NFC this year. It's not shocking that they've made it this far. If they win one more game, I think it starts to be a bit more of like a Cinderella story. And we'll get into that, but we are basically just going to run through the two games. I mean, there's nothing else really to talk about. It's conference championship game weekend. All anybody cares about is these games. So we're going to run through just kind of how we see both games going, talking the big storylines of the games, who the key players are, key matchups, run through any bets anybody likes, prop bets or sides or anything like that. I have a couple myself. And we're going to start with the AFC. I think this is definitely the better matchup of the two. Obviously, in terms of storylines and football, you have Lamar Jackson, who kind of finally, I guess you would say, broke through with his performance against the Texans in terms of postseason performance. That is kind of what had been held against him, although this is by far the best team that he's had. But I think he very much silenced anybody. I think a lot of people liked the Texans last week and thought they could keep it close or maybe even pull off the upset. And Lamar played basically a perfect game, especially in that second half. So you have them, and then they're playing what has become the new evil empire, which is the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. And we can actually talk. I actually want to start talking about this because I feel like the Chiefs were the lovable underdogs for a long time. I think a lot of people loved Patrick Mahomes and his story, and Andy Reid and his story. And when they were going up against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and the Patriots, everybody's rooting for the Chiefs to kind of dethrone them. But now they've been so dominant for so many years. They are now by far the number one franchise in the league over the past 5+ years. They've won multiple rings. You have the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift. Travis Kelce's a huge celebrity. Patrick Mahomes on the Netflix documentary with his family, and people don't like his wife, people don't like his brother, all these other factors that now didn't really exist before. So where are you guys, just not in terms of football, but in terms of, I mean, we have a Mahomes jersey in the background, so I'll start with Nick. In terms of what do you think about the Chiefs? Do you root for the Chiefs in a game like this? Or are you ready for them to fail?
I'm at the point now where I've seen enough. Like, I get it. Mahomes is one of, if not the best we're ever going to see. Andy Reid has cemented himself as one of the best coaches of this era, but give someone else a turn. Like, this would mean a lot more for Lamar to win his first, or Goff or Purdy to win their first, than Mahomes to win his third. Like, just legacies wise, I've always had a soft spot for Lamar. I would love to see him get this done. Mahomes is already great. Like, what's one more ring? He's going to keep doing this, running this back. This is the best. Like, I was rooting for the Bills last weekend on the same principle. It would mean a lot more for Josh to get one than it would for Mahomes to get his third. It's not that I dislike Mahomes or the Chiefs. It's just I like these other guys too. I want other guys to get their moments, because everybody getting compared to Mahomes is just making discourse like insufferable. Like Josh Allen is really good. Lamar is really good. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, all these guys are really good. But when we're comparing them to Mahomes, they all look like shit because Mahomes is that good.
Yeah. Jesse?
I really enjoy watching Patrick Mahomes play football. I'm with Nick, and I don't need to see him win a third. But he definitely has, at this point of the season, everybody has their own narrative. There's every team has their own storyline. And I'd like to see them all. I'm a sucker for the narrative. I love seeing the best stories come out on top. And it would be cool to see Mahomes get that sixth, and he's almost halfway to Brady, and he's still in his 20s. It would be really cool to see that, especially, this is the worst, quote unquote, worst team he's had. And it's kind of just him and Kelsey against the world. But like Nick said, it'd be nice to see somebody else win. I'm personally not rooting for the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. I am rooting for the Lions to win the Super Bowl, and we'll get to that game later, I'm sure. But, I think it would be great to see Lamar get to the Super Bowl, prove a lot of people wrong. I mean, this is a guy who came into the league, and we had Bill Polian being like, yeah, he should be a wide receiver. And it wasn't just Bill Polian. It was a lot of people in sports media were saying that the guy should be a wide receiver, which, I mean, we haven't seen a guy like Lamar really ever with his body type. We've seen a fast quarterback before. We've seen mobile quarterbacks in the past, like Michael Vick, but Randall Cunningham, all these guys in the past that have been really talented. But Lamar's a stick. He is a really thin guy. When you look at him, you think wide receiver, but the guy can ball. At this point of his career, people are like, oh yeah, you just have to contain him and you'll be fine. If you contain him, then he's going to rip you up for 300 yards. He is as much of a what was the quote that came out recently? He's not quarterbacky enough.
Yeah, quarterbacky.
Right? Yeah, come on. He is.
I think that just means white.
Yeah,
that's what they mean by quarterbacky.
Yeah, I mean, he's so good. He's going to win his second MVP, and it's hard to root against him right now. This is a really good Ravens team. This is the best team he's had. The defense is awesome. He has weapons everywhere. Mark Andrews might be back. I'm pretty sure. Did he practice today? I thought I saw a notification saying he practiced.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Nick shaking his head. Yeah.
I mean, I think he's going to play.
And Likely's playing great. He's been playing really well. So you have a two-headed monster there, plus Zay Flowers. You have Odell. There's a ton of weapons on that team. So I'm looking for Lamar to take down Mahomes and get a fresh face out of the AFC.
Yeah, these two offenses have almost kind of flipped, where Mahomes had arguably the best weapons in the league when he first started. Having Tyreek Hill was arguably the best receiver in the league. Travis Kelce was the best tight end in the league for at least their first Super Bowl. And then Lamar's not even a knock on him, but I think a reason that he wasn't as successful or hasn't been as successful was because he didn't really have weapons. He had Mark Andrews, and that was about it. He did not have a legit wide receiver, and I still don't think I like Zay Flowers, but I still don't think he's a legit number one wide receiver. I still think they're not quite there, but obviously it's Zay Flowers and Odell's played much better the last couple of weeks towards the end of the season. So I do think they're getting more together, whereas now the Chiefs are kind of depleted in terms of skill position players. I mean, Pacheco's been really good. And Travis Kelce has turned it on in the playoffs. He's looked much more like Travis Kelce the last two games, especially against the Bills. But it's now Lamar that's kind of in a loaded offense, has, in my opinion, the best offensive coordinator in the NFL. It's hard to say that when it's his first year in the NFL, at least in this run, but I think he's done the best job this year. It's him or Ben Johnson, which we'll talk about with the Lions.
We wanted him to be the Jets head coach way back when.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember editing that episode of the Jet Stream where you and Connor were, we want Todd Monken, and he's done a great job. I mean, they really overhauled their offense in the way they think about running the ball. I mean, you think about what they were doing with those 3 weeks where they had Keaton Mitchell, and they were the best offense in football far and away, like not even close.
Yeah, if they still had him, it would be.
Dalvin Cook has burst now. Like we saw at the end of the Jets season, Dalvin Cook definitely found his legs. And you add him to that offense, he's not as explosive as Keaton Mitchell, obviously. Keaton Mitchell's got like 22-year-old legs. But, adding a guy like that to Gus Edwards, and Justice Hill's had a lot of pop.
I love Justice Hill.
Yeah.
I'm a big Justice Hill guy.
He's a guy like there's
underrated.
certain guys. Yeah, there are certain guys like when you watch them run, like his strides, like I feel like if he just opened up his stride a little bit more, like he'd be the fastest player in the league. But like when he's running, it's just like really like short strides, and I don't know, there's certain guys like that where I feel like he could be even faster,
Yeah, but the reason I like him is I feel like he's a guy that you never see have like a negative play, like Dalvin Cook. We watched Dalvin Cook run, and I know they had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, but you watch Dalvin Cook just run into the line and go nowhere. Justice Hill is it's the same as those, and it could be more of a scheme thing, or scheme is a huge part of it. But it's kind of like we saw before the 49ers got Christian McCaffrey, when they would just have like running back by committee of like Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. and Elijah Mitchell, and like these guys that were like, they're not like great running backs. I mean, Mostert had another good year in Miami. Again, could be the system, but they're not like amazing running backs, Christian McCaffrey type running backs, but you would never see them really have like negative plays. Like they would pick up 3 or 4 yards of rush every single time, and they would just kind of like move. And that's kind of what this Ravens rushing attack has become, whether it's Lamar or Gus Edwards or Justice Hill, or in the last game, it was like 2 carries, but it was looking like their rushing attack can't really be stopped by anybody. And the Chiefs, that has been their biggest kind of negative this year. This defense has improved a ton. We were talking about, or Jesse, you were saying how it's kind of Mahomes and Kelsey against the world. And that is how it is on the offensive side of the ball. But this is actually the best defense Patrick Mahomes has ever had. This is better than their 2 Super Bowl winning defenses. Their secondary has played exceptionally well. Chris Jones is as good as he's ever been. And the pass rush is really good. And it'll be interesting to see kind of how they choose to attack Lamar. And we can get into that too. Because part of the reason Lamar is so good is he's almost impossible to defend. If you blitz him, he's probably going to get out of the pocket and scramble. And if you try to just contain him, like you've been saying, some people have been saying like, oh, you just keep him in the pocket and make him throw. He'll throw all over that defense if you just sit back and let him do whatever he wants with time. So I think it's really interesting to see what they're going to do. And I think this Ravens offense is still underrated in some ways because people, I guess just because people don't respect Lamar, but I think they're going to be able to run for basically anything they want. And I personally think the Ravens are going to win the game, and I think they're going to cover this number. I bet them when it was at -3, just because I knew the number was going to move, but I would even still bet them here. Honestly, I think they win by a touchdown plus.
Ooh, that's spicy. I like that. Yeah. I disagree, but I like it. I like the confidence. I like the Chiefs in this game. I just feel like they have like I said, the whole Kelsey versus Mahomes, the whole team has this chip on their shoulder. Everybody keeps saying this is the worst team that they've had, and you're right. This is the best defense that they've had. This defense is amazing. And it's ridiculous, like how they keep on reloading like this, especially on defense. Getting like L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie, those are 2 really good corners. They're linebackers. Like you don't hear these names very often, like Drew Tranquill, Nick Bolton are 2 guys who are, good linebackers, and obviously the defensive line led by Chris Jones. I think it's going to come down to pressure. Obviously, it's going to come down to the line of scrimmage, like most of these games do. And if they can get pressure with just 4 or 5 guys, I know you don't want to just be like, all right, like, let Mahomes like contain Lamar, because like we said multiple times, he's going to shred you apart. But if you can get pressure with just 4 or 5 guys and Chris Jones, if you can move him around the line bunch, like he did, like he blew up Deion Dawkins and that prevented Josh from throwing that touchdown to Shakir.
Yeah.
If you can get that pressure with the less guys, I think the Chiefs have a really good chance of winning this game. It's just a matter of, can they get that pressure? Because the Ravens' offensive line is no joke. They have our guy Linderbaum, who I wanted on the Jets. Though we got a Tittman who ended up being pretty damn good. But like Stanley, Zietler, our old friend Morgan Moses. So it's really going to come down to those 2 position groups, I think, and whether or not they can get pressure and keep 8 guys out in the secondary. And I wouldn't say dare Lamar to throw, but make him cut him up.
You saw them do it to Allen last week. They forced Allen to take that underneath stuff, those long plotting drives. And that's really the reason you've seen the proliferation of that. I know Fangio resigned his job with the Dolphins today, but that too high look that he started doing in Denver when he was the DC there to slow Mahomes down. There's a reason everybody does that against the dynamic guys now. And the Chiefs will sit back and say, all right, Lamar, let's put together a 15-play drive, and we still think if we have to make a play in the red zone, we can. And that's really, the Chiefs, it always feels like that whenever it feels like they're dead, they find that play they need. Whenever it feels like they're dead. We always used to talk about that with the Patriots, where you can't kill them. They're the zombie that refuses to die, no matter what the score is, no matter who has the ball. Like, even if they hit that ball to Shakir, everybody in the world knows Mahomes is going down the field in that minute 55, and they're either getting a field goal and going to overtime, or they're scoring a touchdown outright and winning the game. Until someone beats the Chiefs, it just feels like they're kind of inevitable here. I mean, Burrow and the Bengals did it a couple of times with really good defenses, and that's really been the key, is a lot of pressure and turnovers. The Bengals picked off Mahomes twice. They kept the Chiefs scoreless in the second half of the one AFC title game when the Bengals went on to play the Rams in the Super Bowl. It is doable. This Chiefs offense is very clunky. If they don't hit those big plays to Rashee Rice, and part of the reason they moved the ball part of the reason they moved the ball so well against the Bills was they had guys off the couch playing linebacker last week. I mean, God bless them, but they had guys who hadn't played football all season, and there's a reason, the Chiefs were able to dot them up in the middle of the field. That's where this game, I think, gets won, is the linebackers and the safeties, because that's generally where both these quarterbacks like to go with the ball, is inside the numbers, middle of the field. And the linebacker play, the Ravens linebackers, those are guys, and Kyle Hamilton, those are guys equipped to slow Kelsey down and say, all right, if Rashee Rice beats us, we can live with that. So I lean with Blake here that I think the Ravens are the better team. I don't think that's really the question. At 3.5, I would probably bet the Chiefs because you're getting the field goal, but I want the Ravens to win this game.
Yeah, and you hit on what I was gonna say next with exactly the name I was gonna say, which is Kyle Hamilton. I think him and those Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith, I think those guys are the difference makers. I think they can totally control Kelsey. And you hit on another point I was going to say, which is, I don't know if the general public knows how depleted the Bills defense was last week, and how they were, like you were saying, playing guys that they had pulled up off the practice squad and pulled off the street, and these guys that were not on the defense when they went on that amazing run to end the regular season and win the division. And that was, I think that's what's fresh in people's mind, is the Chiefs offense we saw last week against the Bills. But that's not even the Chiefs offense we saw against the Dolphins in the wildcard round, let alone the Chiefs offense we saw all year, which was not a very good offense. And I know the drops were a big part of it, and Kelsey not playing up to his standard, and Rashee Rice emerged at the end as kind of a reliable target, but still not a number one wide receiver type target. And I think the Ravens defense is just totally equipped to stop what they want to do. They have run stoppers, both on the line and in the linebacker core that can slow down Pacheco. They have Kyle Hamilton and the linebackers that can stop Kelsey, and they have the guys out wide that can hang with Rashee Rice. I think Marlon Humphrey is supposed to be back this week. He's questionable, but I would guess he plays. I guess you don't know if he's going to be 100%, but I would bet that he at least gives it a go. So I really just think the Ravens are the most complete team. I know these things, like, it basically comes down to in these postseason games, we, like you said, we saw with the Patriots for so many years. Like, at the end of the day, we're the Patriots. A lot of the time they were the best team, but they weren't always the best team. There were a lot of times they went up against teams that had much better seasons, seemingly had more talent, but they just made the right plays. They had the experience in those games. They had the quarterback and the coach that knew what to do at the right moment. And it's hard to go against that. But when you look at basically any offensive metric, defensive metric, running the ball, throwing the ball, anything, the Ravens are a better team than the Chiefs, and they're going to be at home, which I know Mahomes went and got the monkey off his back. I don't know why people were putting it there in the first place. He shouldn't be punished for it's not like he had played like 3 road playoff games and lost them all. He just had never even had to go play one.
Which is crazy in itself.
That was a stupid narrative to begin with. That could he win on the road? Like, yeah, of course he can. But it's definitely going to be much tougher going into Baltimore than being at home, like we've seen him in the past in these conference championship games. So I just think the Ravens are overall a better team. I think they're going to be able to run the ball pretty much at will, and the Chiefs are either going to keep letting them run the ball or they're going to be forced to kind of sell out to stop the run. And I do trust Lamar to make the throws that he needs to make. And that could come back to bite me, but I really do trust him. And I think this Chiefs offense is not something you can depend on. And yeah, if Mahomes has a 2-minute drill to go win the game, is it like, if I could bet right in that moment that he's going to go score? Yeah, I would. But over the course of a whole game, like, I just don't think they'll be able to put it all together.
Yeah, the Ravens defense is amazing. The talent it's one of the more talented defenses we've seen in a while. And I know I'm saying that we're about to talk about San Francisco, who is arguably just as loaded on defense, but especially when you include the corners and Kyle Hamilton, that Ravens group is just one of the best groups we've had in a long time.
The pass rush, you got Jadeveon Clowney in there. You know,
Clowney's been playing well too.
Everywhere. Yeah, Clowney has been playing well. I want to see, like, you know, from the Chiefs though, like, is somebody finally gonna like just play a QB spy the whole game against Lamar? Are we just gonna like not do that? Like, I feel like Houston just didn't really, you know, do that at all, and like I don't know. It feels like that's like a very like obvious thing, and it really hasn't been a thing as much. So I'm looking to see that at least.
Yeah, he ran well against Houston. He ran more than I thought he would against Houston, just because I thought they would try to stop him, and they didn't do a very good job of doing that. But I think even if they do, I think there's just so many more ways they can attack.
Especially if Mark Andrews is back, man. I mean, if he's back, that offense.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And now I think it's also huge that, like you were saying, that Likely got so much playing time that now he's totally confident in himself, where now you can play sets with both of those guys on the field. And it's not like, oh, one of them's blocking, just there to block. One of them's the go-to. It's like both of them could be running the route in the inside the 10-yard line into the end zone. Like, you can't leave one of them for the other one. Like, it's going to be so hard to defend. And that's where the Bills had so much trouble, where they had trouble all season, and it came back to bite them, where they had to settle for field goals, where they struggled in the red zone. And that was one of their biggest issues in the regular season, was they would get inside the 20 and they would just, not even the players, but it seemed more like the play caller, Joe Brady, would just kind of panic and not really know what to call. And it seemed like they were running weird plays and they just wouldn't be able to get the ball in the end zone. Whereas I think the Ravens are very, very good at that. And it's because if you give Lamar any kind of space, same with Josh Allen, but if you give him any kind of space, he's running it in. The different runs they can do between having guys like Justice Hill or giving it to Gus and just letting him plow people over, or the now 2 tight ends and all the weapons. So I think they're going to be able to get the ball in the end zone, which is also something the Bills didn't do very well. But just to end kind of our thoughts on this game, I know, Jesse, you at least said you had a couple prop bets, or just any bets that you like in general for this game.
Yeah, I like Lamar over 207 passing yards. I feel like just his arm just keeps on getting underrated over and over again. Rashee Rice under 6.5. I think catches. I think that it's rare that you have like he's not going to be the top target. Like, he just isn't. It's like Mahomes is going to be looking at Kelsey first pretty much every single time, I feel like. And to get 7 catches in a playoff game on the road is asking a lot from a rookie. So I like the under. I like Kelsey over 5.5 catches. I don't like it. I'm not going to say take his over or under on his receiving yards. I'm not sure. Like, he could just have a huge catch and that could just screw that over. But I know that Mahomes is going to feed him. And this fucked me out of over $3,000 last week. But I'm going to take Mahomes' over rushing yards at 25.5. That bastard just couldn't get 5 more rushing yards last week. But I think that he's going to be under pressure a lot. And in these types of playoff games, Mahomes, when he is under pressure, the guy just gets out and makes a play. And more often than not, it's with his legs. As Jets fans, we saw that firsthand this year. It sucked ass. So I think that those all, I'm doing pretty well with props, so I'm pretty confident in those.
Yeah, I like those. I don't have as much of a feel on Rice, but I do like the Lamar passing over. I think he's going to throw more than people think, because I think the Chiefs are going to end up kind of having to sell out to stop the run, and that's going to lead to him throwing the ball down the field.
Yeah, his rushing over was 66.5. That felt high. I don't know. That scared me
because he ran so much last week against Houston. But I don't think that's really what he wants to do. And I agree on Kelsey doing receptions, not yards, because I do think the Ravens defense is so good that it's going to kind of be like, just give it to the safety blanket, like 3 or 4 yard catches to Kelsey when there's nothing else there. So I like that too. And I bet the Ravens -3, like I said. I also bet the Ravens first half -2.5. I think if you can get that under a field goal, that's a good spot to be. And then I alluded to it a little bit. The only prop I actually bet was Justice Hill over 49.5 rushing plus receiving yards.
Oh,
I
like that.
He ended up having the majority of the carries last week, which I think was the first time he's had more carries than Gus Edwards this season, or at least the last few weeks. So I think he's kind of established himself as the number one guy. He's very reliable, and like I said, he just seems to always kind of be moving forward and picking up a couple yards. And Gus Edwards seems to be more like the goal line guy now, whereas Justice Hill is who's moving them up and down the field for the most part. And then adding rushing plus receiving yards, because he's also much more than Gus Edwards, the receiving threat out of the backfield. So that's what I went with. Nick, do you have anything?
I had Kelsey receptions. It feels like that hits every single playoff game the Chiefs have played for the last 5 or 6 years, and that's the security blanket in this offense. And then I wanted to put together, I was looking at anytime touchdown parlay. I wanted to put together Kelsey and one of the Ravens running backs, but I couldn't decide which one. Gus, obviously, you're going to not get as good of a number because he scores more of the touchdowns. But I feel like that taking the 2 layups and the touchdown parlay never hits. So I probably am going to end up doing Kelsey and Justice Hill anytime touchdown as a parlay.
I love that.
I feel so weird about running back touchdowns in the playoffs for some reason. I feel like when all these teams have gotten in the red zone,
look at the Lions last week. Yeah,
they kind of just panic, and they'll go 3 or 4 wide receivers out wide, and they'll have the running back like motion out, or they'll have the running back block, or they'll go like jumbo and they'll do play action. But you haven't seen, and like I had Lamar this year in fantasy. I can't tell you how many times Gus Edwards just stole touchdowns from Mark Andrews and the wide receivers because they would just feed him a couple of times in a row. At most, they're running on first down. And once you get the first down, At this point, you're in the playoffs. This is the NFC Championship. Do you want to put the ball in Gus Edwards' hands, or do you want to put the ball in Lamar's hands? If I'm Todd Monken, I want the ball in my best player's hands. So if anything, if I'm going to take a touchdown bet, and I don't hate Justice Hill, because at this point, after everything I've said, Justice Hill is going to score, right? But I feel like if you're going to take somebody to score a rushing touchdown, it's going to be Lamar. He'll scramble from the 7-yard line in a shotgun formation, and he'll dive in the corner pylon and get it or something like that. That's my take on the rushing touchdowns in the playoffs, because I've taken a rushing touchdown in every single game, and none of the rushing touchdowns have hit. So
yeah, James Cook killed me last week, not getting in the end zone.
Yeah.
Same thing where, that is what the Bills did. They just were like, Josh, just run and just try to plow people over.
Yeah.
But that's good stuff on the AFC. We're right at half an hour. So that's good timing to move on to the NFC. It is the Detroit Lions playing to get into the Super Bowl for the first time since 1991 in the conference championship game, where as they're going to San Francisco, where Kyle Shanahan is playing his 4th NFC championship game as the head coach of the 49ers. I think that's right. 4th. Yeah. He's won 1 and lost 2.
Yeah.
He lost last year with no quarterback.
Yeah.
He
lost to the Super Bowl against the.
He lost to McVay.
He went to the Super Bowl, and then he lost to the Rams the year they won. So yeah, his 4th conference championship game. They are out to 7-point favorites. It opened at 6.5, and it's ticked up to 7, and it's kind of sitting there, which isn't surprising. I think if it gets under a touchdown, people want to bet the 49ers. If it gets over a touchdown, people will take the Lions. So it's probably sticking around there. The total is 51, almost a whole touchdown higher than the total in the other game. So this game's obviously fascinating for a lot of reasons, but like I said, it is fascinating because it is the Detroit Lions. By nature, that makes it fascinating. Dan Campbell, a guy that people basically turn into a joke and a meme, his first year as a head coach, first even couple years as a head coach.
First
people didn't really
conference.
take him. Yeah, he's from his opening press conference. People didn't take him seriously, and I'm not saying he's some kind of football mastermind wizard like the guy on the other sideline, Kyle Shanahan, is, but you can't say anything against the guy at this point. What he's done there is absolutely ridiculous. The way he's inspired his team, the way he motivates them, the fact that he is, in my opinion, probably the number 1 most reliable head coach in the NFL when it comes to making the correct decisions on going for it on 4th down, not kicking field goals, going for 2. We saw it, obviously, the famous game against Dallas that ended up not mattering because the Cowboys lost in the wild card round, so they didn't have to go on the road to Dallas that almost would have mattered, but it didn't. So all these storylines, I think, are going to be really interesting. But I think the number one thing that we should start with, and then just see where we go from there, is the quarterbacks. Brock Purdy has, I feel like, leading up just between last week's game against the Packers leading into this game, the Brock Purdy discourse has been maddening for me to read online. It's basically, he had an MVP level season. He's probably going to finish 2nd, maybe 3rd to Josh Allen in the MVP race. And then he had a so-so game against the Packers last week that included him having a game-winning touchdown drive to send his team to the conference championship game. And all of a sudden, people think that he's not good, which has been interesting to see. I think he's good. Obviously, he's in an incredible system with incredible skill position players, but I think he's already better than Jimmy G was in that system. He had a way better year this year than Jimmy G ever had, and I know they have McCaffrey, which is another level, but I think he is ridiculously disrespected. And then the quarterback on the other side, Jared Goff, is another guy who's been ridiculously disrespected up until this season. I think people have and this has been his best season as an NFL quarterback, to be fair. So some of the disrespect, especially when he was on the Rams, was somewhat warranted. But he's been unbelievable this season, and again, he maybe is the best offensive coordinator in the NFL, one of the best too. And I think it really comes down to, this game could come down to one of these two quarterbacks not living up to how they've played the whole season, making a big mistake, throwing a big interception, and Brock Purdy kind of trying to get rid of the ghost of last year's NFC Championship game, where he had to play the entire second half with one arm and couldn't throw the football, and just kind of had to watch his team slowly lose their shot at a Super Bowl when he literally couldn't throw. That's going to be in his head. So it's really interesting. So let's just kind of start. Nick, I'll start with you, with how you see these two quarterbacks overall, and then how you think they're going to play in this game.
Blake, you, Jesse, for that matter, the three of us watched a lot of Brock Purdy at Iowa State. If you told me the Brock Purdy that played at Iowa State was going to be a regular NFL starter, let alone good, I would have called you genuinely insane. The amount of times I watched him piss his pants against mediocre defenses, forcing balls into double coverage, fumbling to blindside sacks, just mind-numbingly terrible decisions with the football, pretty much at all times. I mean, Brocktober was always great when he was at Iowa State. They would roll through, and then once conference play started and they would have to play Oklahoma State or Oklahoma, he would turn back into a pumpkin. The fact he is decent at the NFL level alone is nothing short of a miracle. I've always felt Goff is probably the lowest end of the starters you could win a Super Bowl with. I don't think he's awful by any stretch, but I think you need a good situation around him to get the best out of him. And we've seen that. You know, he's gone to a conference title game twice. The first time they went to the Super Bowl with the Rams and they got shut down in the Super Bowl. But if you give him a good situation, you put him in favorable passing situations where he doesn't have the blitz bearing down on him, he can do a pretty solid job of playing quarterback. That's what I think is going to be really interesting to watch in this game, because both of these quarterbacks, I'm not going to call them gun shy, but they are both used to playing in pretty good pockets because they both have really good offensive lines. The trench play in this game is going to be awesome. I mean, you're going to have Aiden Hutchinson on Trent Williams. You're going to have Bosa on Sewell or Chase Young on Sewell. There's going to be some real big boys going at it in the trenches in this game, and it's going to be awesome. But both of these guys are used to having pretty clean pockets, guys wide open, because they both use a lot of play action and bootlegs to manipulate the pocket to open receivers. So whoever's pass rush dictates this game is probably going to win, in all honesty, because both these quarterbacks, I mean, Goff historically has been atrocious against the blitz. I mean, it was always him and Baker Mayfield in the bottom left corner of those charts about EPA against the blitz. And that'll be the case. San Francisco's defense is awesome. I mean, and they're missing guys, and they're still awesome. So really looking forward to this game.
Don't forget about Chase Young.
Yeah.
Man. That 49ers defense is scary.
Kinlaw, Buckner, not Buckner,
yeah,
Kinlaw, Fred Warner, Greenlaw, so many guys on that defense.
Yeah. I'm going to preface this by saying I have a Lions future. All right. So for all the listeners out there, I am incredibly biased here. I am rooting hard for the Lions, but I can be unbiased. I'll be honest. The book is still out on Brock Purdy for me, and there's no reason that it should be. Like, he's checked all the boxes, man. He's had 4,000 yards this year. Like, he's been awesome. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just like the fact that he was Mr. Irrelevant, that like I just can't, like, my brain just like
you
can't.
Watched him in college, Jesse.
I watched him at Iowa State. Like
which is totally fair.
Yeah, like I don't know, man. It's weird. I just feel like it's more of a product of the system, maybe. It's like Shanahan's just, like, it's not like Jimmy Garoppolo is anything special. Like we just watched him in Las Vegas and he was horrible, and he had his original coach, like McDaniels was with him. I think it's Shanahan is a genius. Like you said, he is a genius, and he gets the most out of everybody on the offensive side of the ball. It's tough for me. It really is. But if he wins this game, I'm going to be much more bought in on Purdy. But again, it's just my brain has a hard time wrapping around the idea that the last pick in the draft, and it's not just the last pick in the draft. It's who he is. I watched him at Iowa State. Like it just doesn't make sense. Like you said, Nick, if you told me when he was at Iowa State that he'd be in back-to-back NFC Championship games and having the seasons that he's having, it just wouldn't make sense. But also in the same breath, like when you have like Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and all these absolute ballers, because that's what they are. Those are 4 guys you could just throw on the All-Pro team, and I would have no problem with that. Plus you have probably the best offensive mind of his generation as his head coach, right? I mean, I don't think that that's too crazy for me to say.
It's McVay. Those are the 2 candidates.
Yeah, and then like Mike McDaniel's like creeping up, like, hey, don't forget about me, but like you're not there.
Well, he's an offshoot of these 2.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Yeah, same thing with LaFleur. That's what I found so interesting about that game last week was they both run the same offense. All of these guys. I mean,
everything.
Kyle has his own tree. Yeah, Kyle has his own tree, and he's only
at this point
7 years into being a head coach, 6 years into being a head coach. His tree has already produced multiple good head coaches.
And even got like Juwan Jennings, like you have like the running back,
some big
like
catches
Elijah
last
Mitchell.
weik. Jennings.
Yeah, like these guys, and then their offensive line is just full of studs, and Trent Williams, Kyle Juszczyk. Like I'm naming a fullback, but he's a legitimate factor on their offense. He does so many of the little things so well, whether it's picking up blitzes or going out in the flat and making like a 30-yard catch out of nowhere. The 49ers are dangerous, and I'm being disrespectful to Brock Purdy right now. I understand that, but and he's earned more respect than I'm giving him. But it's just like I said, I watched him in college, and it still doesn't make sense to me. And then on the other side of things, you have Goff, who I thought he was done. Honestly, I thought that this was like a throwaway trade. Like all right, sure, take Goff. All right, whatever. Like we'll take Stafford. You get some picks.
They're dumping his cap.
Yeah. And what Detroit has done has been nothing short of miraculous with this guy. It was 3-10. I think it was 3-10 his first year with them. Hold on, I had it up. He was 3-10-1 his first year. 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 3,200 yards. He played in 14 games. It's fine, but like they were bad. That was a bad team. Amon-Ra St. Brown comes really out of nowhere. You bring in Sam Laporta out of Iowa. You draft Jahmyr Gibbs, who everyone was like, why are you like drafting a running back in the first round? Like I thought we talked about this. And Gibbs has
they didn't use him all year either.
Yeah, and he didn't use him. And now they are, though, which is amazing. And David Montgomery, say what you want about David Montgomery, but I mean, he's really good between the tackles and getting those really tough yards. He's another one of those guys who just every time he touches it, he falls forward for like 3 yards at least. So like having that 1-2 punch, and then that offensive line is crazy. So if they can keep him upright, which I honestly like, all of me thinks, I think that the offensive lines and defensive lines are kind of going to cancel each other out. I think that those 2 units are so good that I don't think that there's going to be a ton of pressure being given. I think both those offensive lines are going to hold up pretty well. And I think that these offensive minds, Ben Johnson, Kyle Shanahan, know that they need to get the ball out quickly. I think there's going to be, and we'll get to the bets later, but I think there's going to be a lot of receptions by running backs in this game. I think there's going to be a lot of short catches. Amon-Ra over the middle. But Goff has really turned things around. I'm really impressed. 30 touchdowns this year, 4,500 yards, back-to-back years with pretty much 4,500 yards. And I don't want to just ignore Dan Campbell here. This is a guy who, like you said, he's not like, I don't know necessarily how much he influences the X's and O's, but he's a genius in his own right when it comes to working with people. He has the pulse of that team and that city on a level. He restored the roar. You really don't see that.
You don't see that on graphs. The nerds on Twitter aren't tweeting out.
But you don't
restore
see
the roar
it
graphs.
You don't see it in the NFL very often, where a head coach can galvanize a whole city like a college coach usually
Yeah,
does.
it's very big college coach energy that is
Very
on
much
the NFL
so.
level.
Yeah,
Especially being a rah-rah guy as opposed to an
right.
X's and O's guy.
I feel like the Chargers hiring Harbaugh today, they're trying to kind of capture some of that. That's not going to be Justin Herbert's team. That's going to be Jim Harbaugh's team. He is going to be the face of that franchise. The guy just won a national championship. We're not talking about the Chargers right now, though. But Dan Campbell has really galvanized that city and given Jared Goff a confidence that I didn't think existed in him. Because he definitely learned a ton from McVay. I mean, he had good seasons with the Rams. He threw for tons of yards, and he had statistically good seasons. But I don't know. I just feel like the guy just isn't fazed by anything at this point. He's seen everything. He's been to the Super Bowl. He's faced the best defensive coach ever in Bill Belichick. I just don't think that there's anything that the 49ers are going to be able to throw at him that he's going to be like, all right. And and it's only year 8 for him, but he's been through so much already. As a number 1 pick, going to a Super Bowl, losing in a scoreless game, basically, then getting traded for the guy who led the franchise that you're going to for a decade and was the number 1 overall pick there. He's just kind of, I don't know. He's like that Cali kid who just doesn't give a shit at this point and is just going out there and balling, and he's taken on the identity of the city and his head coach.
The Rams sent him to Detroit to die, effectively. They said, we don't care what happens to you at this point. It's over. We're done with you. It doesn't matter. And he has resurrected his career. One thing I wanted to ask both of you off of this topic, because we're talking about Campbell and Shanahan. I think Kyle's a genius, but he also pisses his pants with the clock in the playoffs every single year.
For sure.
I do not understand how you can be that good of an X's and O's strategy guy, but you don't understand how the clock works. I do not understand.
Or if you're that smart that you don't just have somebody on your staff that says, you make every clock, you tell me when to call a timeout, you tell me how aggressive I should be with my play calling. If you're that smart, that football smart, I get everybody has their strong suits. Dan Campbell clearly, I don't think Dan Campbell's the one that let's go for it. I think Dan Campbell has a great analytics staff that tells him, yep, we're going for it here. And he just 100% goes with whatever they say. And I think that is just as good of a quality as knowing yourself what you should do, is hiring people and trusting those people. And I think we're talking about Dan Campbell's people skills are part of the reason he's so good. And I think that is why he's so good when it comes to those decisions, because he's like, I hired this guy to tell me what the analytics say about when I should go for it, when I should kick a field goal, when I should do, and he fully trusts the people that he hired. And I wrote this down as my number 1 factor of the game. I think the number 1 way that the Lions can win this game and pull the upset is not Brock Purdy having a bad game. It's not the defensive line having a good game or whatever. It's 100%. If the Lions win this game, I think it will be because Dan Campbell goes for every 4th down. He plays to win on every single drive. He goes for 2 in a crazy spot that people don't expect. He kicks an onside kick or does something insane, a fake punt, something that is just totally off the wall. And Shanahan sits there and says, I have the better football team. If I just call my game the way I'm supposed to call it, we have the better players. We're at home. Everything's going to go the way it's supposed to. And we're going to find a way to win. And that's what he did against Green Bay, basically. He was so conservative. And so at the end of the first half against the Packers, I was out at a bar with some friends watching that game. And I bet the 49ers in that game and lost. And so I was rooting for them to cover, obviously. And so at the end of that first half, I'm screaming at the television, turning to my friend and asking my friends if I'm missing, am I missing something with the clock and the time? Because he had 2 timeouts and 2 minutes for the best offense in the NFL to drive the field. And he was totally just letting the clock run down and seemed to just have either no confidence that his offense was going to get the ball down into scoring position, or just that he wasn't feeling the need to be aggressive at all. And he let the ball go all the way down. or let the clock go all the way down, and they ended up kicking like a 48-yard field goal that they missed, rather than picking up a couple more first downs and making that more manageable, or even getting in the end zone, which they probably could have done if they were aggressive. So I think that is the number one factor in this game, is whether Shanahan can play to win and not, or coach to win and not coach to lose, because Dan Campbell will 100% be coaching to win.
That's a legitimate advantage the Lions have. Like, that's not like, usually it's like what's going on in the field and there's two good coaches and, it's whatever. Shanahan has a history of this at this point, where he just shits his pants in these big moments and just can't figure the clock out. And like we've mentioned ad nauseum at this point, like Campbell's really good at that. And he's shown it over and over again. And the guy's got balls the size of Detroit. Like he's just really good at that. That's a legitimate advantage that goes in the Lions' favor, I think. And I guarantee there's going to be a huge moment and Shanahan's going to piss his pants again. It's just going to happen. Whether or not that costs them the game, I don't know yet. But there's going to be a moment where he's going to need to make a decision and it's going to be the wrong one.
I mean, you said
every time.
all these games. He's had a lead in all of these games. He had a lead at halftime in the 49er game against the Rams when the Rams went to the Super Bowl. They were winning when Jimmy went onto the field in the Super Bowl against Kansas City. They were winning last year at halftime at the NFC. Excuse me. They had a chance in that game before Purdy died in that NFC title game. And then, of course, is the OC of the Falcons in the Super Bowl.
I was going to say, if you weren't going to bring it up, 28-3. Just sat there and said, we're not going to lose this game, right? Like, I just don't make any mistakes. Like, everything will be fine. The two most pathetic coaches in the NFL.
I hold him personally responsible for the lack of touchdowns that Julio Jones scored throughout his career, but that's neither here nor there. It's I think a massive factor. And of course, there's always, when you play the chance game of going for it on fourth downs and not taking the points and these types of things, there's a chance you don't convert the fourth downs. Over the last couple of years, Lane Kiffin has been the king of this in college football, where I love watching Lane Kiffin coach a football game, because he, in a sense, is Dan Campbell in terms of he's going to go for every fourth down. He's not going to kick a field goal. The bigger the game, the more aggressive he's going to be in terms of, which is what you should do. The bigger the underdog you are, the more aggressive you should be in those situations. I guarantee there's going to be a situation where they have a field goal chance, and I don't know who's calling this game. I guess it's Fox, so maybe not, because Greg Olson's really good with that stuff. But if it was a different announcer, that they would be like, oh, you're the underdog, like you get the chance to put some points on the board, you should just take them. It's like, no, it's the complete and total opposite. Like, the bigger of an underdog you are, the more you need to take advantage of any opportunity you have to score as many points as possible. And that's what Lane Kiffin has done against Alabama and LSU over the last couple of years. And specifically against Alabama, it's bit him the last couple of years, where he's gone like 0 for 5 on fourth downs in games against Alabama. I think 2 years ago is the game he went like 0 for 5 on fourth downs. And that's always possible. And then things don't break your way. And that's just the way it goes over a long period of time. Things will go your way more often than not if you're making the right decisions. But it's always possible, of course, that Shanahan plays the conservative game and it works out, because Dan Campbell tries some crazy things and they don't work out. But I would much rather go out that way than go out not coaching to win the game. But I'll kind of give my final thoughts on how I see this game going, and then let you guys do the same, and then we'll get out of here. But I did write a write-up on this game for Action Network at the beginning of the week, like a kind of instant reaction to the matchup. And so I pulled a couple numbers that were interesting when I wrote that. I think everybody knows the Lions, between the two sides of the ball, their biggest weakness is the pass defense. They're very good against the run. Their pass rush is really solid, but it's the secondary where they've kind of been hurt this season. We've seen that in the playoffs already. Honestly, I think the Rams really should have won that game against Detroit. I think they had plenty of chances to win that game and didn't take advantage of it.
Matt Stafford threw for like 370. Baker Mayfield threw for like 350. So they have gotten shredded through the air the last couple of weeks, despite winning those games. And obviously both teams, particularly the Bucs, were playing from behind. So that has something to do with why they were throwing the ball a lot. But I do think Brock Purdy ultimately is ready for this occasion. And I do want to say, I was saying at the beginning how I think he's been totally disrespected. I'm saying in the context of the offense he plays in, because that's the only way you can judge him is based on the team that he plays on and the teams he plays against. If he got drafted into Bryce Young's situation, would he be horrible? Yeah, he probably would.
He'd probably be not in the league anymore.
Yeah, but he was, but he wasn't. He
right.
He made it onto
Fran.
this team. He earned this starting spot, I guess, over Trey Lance. Obviously, injuries and all different kinds of things, but he earned this spot with how good he's played. He was the number one quarterback in the NFL in EPA per play, and you can say all you want about weapons, but those are his weapons that he has for this game, assuming Deebo Samuel is going to play, which I guess it's still pretty 50-50.
Yeah,
and obviously
that's huge.
It's huge. He's an unbelievable player. He does so many different things for them. He unlocks what Ayuk can do a lot more. He unlocks different things in the running game when they put him in the backfields. But I will say I think it's huge. Obviously, he went to South Carolina. I love Deebo Samuel. He's one of my favorite players in the NFL. So I'm not trying to downplay his importance. But people are like pointing back to when they went on that streak where they lost 3 games, right? Against Cleveland and whoever else they lost to. And saying, oh, those were the games they played without Deebo.
Trent
like
Williams
they can't
too.
win without him.
No Trent Williams,
Yeah, but I was going to say, I think the person that was missing in those games that was more important was Trent Williams. I think Trent Williams is probably the best player in the NFL. If you take every position, I think he's better at his position than anybody else is at their position in the NFL. And so I think him missing for those games was way more important. The pass protection, the run game, all of it's so important. And hopefully Deebo Samuel will play. Hopefully he'll be able to play the whole game and be good to go. But I think even without him, the 49ers offense is going to be too much. I think they're going to put up like 35 in this game. And as much as I like this Detroit offense, and I think they will be able to score, I think they're going to be able to particularly they're going to be able to run on San Francisco, but that's not really what they want to do. They want to throw it downfield and get it to Amon-Ra and those guys. But where you can attack San Francisco is on the ground. So I think either if they try to throw on San Francisco, it's not going to go well. And I think Goff is going to have a bit of a tough day. And if they try to run on San Francisco, I just don't think their run game is good enough to kind of keep up with what I think San Francisco's offense is going to do. So ultimately, I do think the 49ers win this game. I did bet them at -6.5. I would bet them at 7. I wouldn't bet them over 7 if it gets to 7.5. And then I did bet a George Kittle anytime touchdown. It's at plus money. I think this is partially thinking that Deebo isn't going to be totally healthy and maybe not going to play at all. So I think if he ends up not playing, then you're getting a great number there because he'll be the number 1 red zone target for sure. Especially like I was saying, the way as good as McCaffrey is, the way you attack Detroit is through the air, not on the ground. So I think that is where they will have more success trying to get into the end zone. So I really like Kittle there. And we were talking about it earlier, so I'm just going to give the numbers because now I have them right in front of me. Over the past 2 years in Detroit, Jared Goff has played 17 home games and 17 away games. In the 17 home games, he has 42 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. In his 17 away games, he has 17 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So turnovers are actually pretty comparable. Only 1 more interception on the road than at home. But the touchdown numbers are insane. The biggest splits, I can't say that for sure, but probably the biggest splits you'll see an NFL quarterback of home versus away. And part of that is he has played really bad in bad weather throughout his career. And I don't think the weather's supposed to be too bad in San Francisco. So like, I don't think it'll be a massive factor, but I do think away from the dome, away from the home crowd, with just the pressure of an away crowd and all these different things, I do think if I was to say one of the two quarterbacks is going to make a big mistake, throw a pick six or something, I think it's actually more likely to be Goff than to be Purdy. But that's kind of my final thoughts on the game. That's the bets that I made. So Jesse, go ahead with your kind of final thoughts on the game.
Yeah, I agree with the Debo point, and Trent Williams. I think they're both really important. And I agree that Trent Williams is, I can't think of anybody else that's better at what they do than maybe TJ Watt. Like maybe, but I'm, like I said at the beginning of this segment, I am on the Lions. I have them at 18-1. I have them at 22-1. The 18-1, I have actually parlayed with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander to win MVP. But you know, I have the Lions straight up also to win the Super Bowl. I like the Lions in this game to cover. Lions +7. I like all of Jared Goff's overs. 255.5 passing yards. I think if they're, he's going to be airing it out regardless. They want to throw the ball, whether they're winning or losing. Goff over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I like Jahmyr Gibbs. Like I said earlier, I think there's going to be a lot of throwing to running backs this game, getting the ball out quick. Gibbs over 3.5 receptions. My biggest, and the thing I love the most out of all the bets in this game is Goff over 1.5 rush yards. All right. I just don't see how that just feels like free money to me. He's gonna scramble at some point. He's gonna step up in the pocket and get like 3 yards, and that'll hit. You know, and it's not like college where if you get sacked, you lose rushing yards. So I love that. I like the over 50.5. I think that this game is going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be like a 35-31. I mean, I'm rooting for the Lions. I think it's more likely that San Francisco wins this game. If I had to give an official prediction, it would be like 35-31, like I said, 49ers. But I am rooting hard for the Lions. I think they definitely can win this game. I think they have an advantage, and I wouldn't say it's a huge advantage in coaching, but I like Dan Campbell to not make a mistake. I think that Shanahan is more likely to make a mistake in a big moment just because of his track record. I think Jared Goff is, like I said, he's seen like everything at this point. He's been 8 years in the league and he's already seen so much. And those road splits are definitely interesting. That's a huge discrepancy in home versus away in terms of offensive production. But I think Dan's going to have this team ready. I think these guys understand the assignment. I think they know what's at stake. San Fran has the experience, but I think that there's just something magical with this Lions team. And I think that I think they're going to cover. And I'm rooting like hell for them to win.
I have McCaffrey over 35.5 receiving yards. 49ers linebackers are decent against the run, but I agree with what Jesse was saying earlier that we're going to see a lot of underneath stuff in this game because of the pass rushes. And typically speaking, the way you beat a pass rush is you get the ball out quickly or you run the ball effectively. And the number's a little bit more. The line is a little bit better at -114 as opposed to -122 for McCaffrey's rushing yards. That's the logic there. And then this is a fun one just because I like this guy. Jamison Williams over 28.5 receiving yards. He gets that in one catch. If he gets a catch in this game, he probably goes over that number.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for these conference championship games. A lot of different opinions. Me and Jesse going head to head on both games. So no matter what you want to bet, you can just take the side of whoever you want to bet, and then you can say that you have something to back it up based on what any of us said. So some fun props in there. If anybody is looking for any of those, ultimately, like I said, I think it could be a slightly disappointing conference championship game Sunday with the Ravens and 49ers winning somewhat convincingly to set up the best possible Super Bowl for us. I'm willing to make that sacrifice if that's the case, because I think these are the two best teams in the NFL, the Ravens and the 49ers. So if we get that Super Bowl, then we're all, I think, set up for an incredible Super Bowl matchup. So that would be awesome. But like we said, anything could happen in either of these games. Dan Campbell can create some magic. We know Patrick Mahomes can create some magic. So hopefully we get 2 great games. And then we have a great Super Bowl. So thanks to you guys for joining me. Do you both want to make some quick plugs of your own podcasts before we get out of here?
Nick?
I do a couple different things. Liberty Blue podcast. We do the Rangers. I do Locked On NHL, the national NHL show, Thursdays, where we talk about the entire NHL power rankings, and Locked On Flames, do a Calgary Flames podcast a few times a week. And we're going to start doing MYG weekly again, but we got to figure out when we're going to do that. So
I'm not buying it. I'll believe it when I see it.
Ethan NYG has complicated things.
NYG quarterly.
NYG quarterly. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jesse Finver. I do the Jet Stream. Nick graciously produces that for us. So you can follow the Jet Stream, or you can follow myself and my co-host Connor Sheeran. We both, love talking Jets. The Jet season is over, so it's more Nick's talk on my Twitter these days. And obviously the football games, and we're all in on the Lions. Go Lions, baby! Gotta love the Lions.
Yeah, that's it. So go follow those guys, listen to their shows. If you're listening to this wherever, make sure you're subscribed. If you're on YouTube, like it and subscribe there and all that good stuff. So thanks everybody for listening, and I guess I'll be back for the Super Bowl. So see you then.